Genius Kids. Cultivating love for learning.
Lesson 3. The Sultans of Delhi. Knowledge acquisition. The Sultans of Delhi, who ruled between 1206 to 1526 AD, left an indelible mark on the pages of Indian history. For more than 300 years, 5 dynasties ruled the country. These dynasties were the Slave Kings, 1206 to 1290 AD, the Khaljis, 1290 to 1320 AD, the Tughlaqs, 1320 to 1414 AD, the Saids, 1414 to 1451 AD, and the Lodis, 1451 to 1526 AD. Delhi, a seat of power. Delhi served several empires as a capital. The Tomaras made the city of Dilika, Delhi, in 736 AD. Later, the Chauhans, after defeating the Tomaras, founded their rule in Delhi. By this time, Delhi had become an important commercial center. Coins, Dehliwal, started to be minted. Many Jana merchants settled in Delhi. With the establishment of Sultanate rule, Delhi became a seat of power. Delhi now transformed into a capital which controlled vast areas of the subcontinent. In 1206, Delhi became the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Many dynasties expanded and built forts and townships in and around the city of Delhi. Do you know, it was probably A.I. Biruni who introduced the Bhagavad Gita to Muslim readers. He was also the first Muslim to study the Puranas. The Mamluk or Slave Dynasty, 1206 to 1290 AD. Muhammad Ghori was assassinated in 1206 AD. His newly conquered dominion suffered due to his sudden death. After his death, Muhammad Ghori's Indian possessions came under the rule of his general, Qutubuddin Aibak, with whose reign began the Slave Dynasty. Qutubuddin Aibak, 1206 to 1210 AD. Qutubuddin Aibak ruled India only for 4 years. He had been sold as a slave in his childhood, and after passing through a few hands, was finally bought by Sultan Muhammad Ghori. Muhammad Ghori soon recognized his efficiency and gave him an important post. Qutubuddin Aibak is known as the founder of the Slave Dynasty or Mamluk Dynasty. Mamluk means a slave who was born of free parents. They were called slave rulers because 3 sultans, Qutubuddin, Iltutmish and Balbanvere, themselves once slaves. After Ghori's death, Aibak set up a free kingdom with its headquarters in Lahore. He thus laid the foundations of the Delhi Sultanate. Aibak was the first free sultanate ruler in India. He was very kind. His habit of distributing large sums of money in charity gained him the title of Lakhbaksh, i.e., the giver of lakhs. He built 2 great mosques, one at Delhi called the Quwwatul Islam, Power of Islam, and another at Ajmer called Dhai Din Ka Jhompara. He made no fresh victories because he was busy with consolidating his rule in the conquered territories. He did not even try to establish a healthy system of administration. He followed a military rule. He also started the construction of the famous Qutub Minar at Delhi, but most of the work was finished by Iltutmish. The ruling dynasties of Delhi, Rajput dynasties. After the death of Harsha, northern India broke up into small regional kingdoms. In the period 647 to 1192 AD, a number of kingdoms came into existence and were ruled by the Rajputs. Tomaras, early 12th century, 1165. Anandapala, 1130 to 1145. Chauhans, 1165 to 1192. Prithviraj Chauhan, 1175 to 1192. Early Turkish rulers 1206 to 1290. The early slave sultans. Kutubuddin Aibak 1206 to 1210. Shamsuddin Aibak 1210 to 1236. Rajia 1236 to 1240. Ghiyasuddin Balban 1266 to 1287. Khalji dynasty 1290 to 1320. Jalaluddin Khalji 1290 to 1296. Alauddin Khalji 1296 to 1316. Mubarak Khalji 1316 to 1320. Tughlaq dynasty 1320 to 1414. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq 1320 to 1324. Muhammad Tughlaq 1324 to 1351. Firoz Shah Tughlaq 1351 to 1388. Later Tughlaqs 1388 to 1414. Sayyid dynasty 1414 to 1451. Khizr Khan 1414 to 1421. Mubarak Shah 1421 to 1434. Muhammad Shah 1434 to 1443. Alam Shah 1443 to 1451. Lori dynasty 1451 to 1526. Behlul Lori 1451 to 1489. Sikandar Lori 1489 to 1517. Ibrahim Lori 1517 to 1526. One day in 1210 AD, while playing polo, Kutubuddin fell off his horse and died. Iltutmish 1210 to 1236 AD. Kutubuddin was succeeded by Iltutmish. Shamsuddin Iltutmish was born of Turkish parents who belonged to the Ilbari tribe of Central Asia. After the death of Kutubuddin, the nobles of Delhi invited Iltutmish, the governor of Badayu, to come to Delhi. Iltutmish reached Delhi and assumed sovereign powers. He made Delhi as his capital. He devoted the first 10 years of his rule in consolidating his seat of power. Iltutmish had to face serious troubles from his rival Turkish nobles who had been very influential in political and military affairs. Iltutmish and the Mongols. During Iltutmish's reign, the Mongols appeared on the borders of India for the first time. These fierce and warlike people, under the leadership of Chengiz Khan, overran northwestern territories and reached the banks of the Indus. Some enemies of the Mongols sought shelter with Iltutmish, but he refused. He thus saved his kingdom from the Mongols' fury and imminent devastation. Iltutmish's buildings. Iltutmish was a great lover of buildings. He completed the construction of the Qutub Minar in Delhi, which was started by Kutubuddin Aibak. He also built a magnificent mosque at Badayu and his own mausoleum in red sandstone at Delhi. Rajia Sultana, 1236 to 40 AD. Before his death, Iltutmish had nominated his daughter Razia as his heir. However, some Turkish nobles were not ready to accept a woman as their sultan. The nobles accused her of showing undue favors to an Abyssinian noble, Jalaluddin Yaqut. All these factors provoked the nobles to revolt. Nasiruddin Mahmud, 1246 to 1266 AD. After Rajia Sultana's death, there was political chaos and confusion in the country. Two rulers, Bahram and Masood, were enthroned. They proved to be worthless, and eventually Nasiruddin Mahmud, the younger son of Iltutmish, was raised to the throne. One of his nobles, Ghiyasuddin Balban, became the prime minister. Balban was the most powerful in the state. Ghiyasuddin Balban, 1266 to 1286 AD. After the death of Nasiruddin Mahmud in 1266, Balban became the undisputed Sultan of Delhi after a hard struggle against his enemies. He ruled the country for 20 years from 1266 to 86. Balban made the Sultan's position supreme. He introduced the Persian custom of Sizdah and Pebos, or kneeling and kissing the Sultan's feet. The Orthodox Muslims opposed this as they believed that one could bow only before God. Balban had to face several hardships as a prime minister and as a sultan. His own Turkish nobles, called the Forty, plotted various conspiracies against him. the Rajput chiefs also had not been completely subdued. The Mongol invasions too had become a great danger to the security of the empire. But Balban faced all of them boldly. The Khalji Sultans. Jalaluddin Khalji, 1290 to 1296 AD. Jalaluddin Khalji occupied the seat of power after murdering Kekubad, the last ruler of the slave dynasty. The Turkish nobles found it hard to accept a Khalji as the Sultan of the kingdom. But Jalaluddin proved to be too strong for them. He had another achievement to his credit. He had repulsed a terrible invasion of the Mongols in 1291. Jalaluddin was treacherously murdered by his nephew Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin Khalji, 1296 to 1320 AD. Alauddin was enthroned in 1296 AD. He could not feel secure unless he had subdued his rivals. He sent a force of 40,000 soldiers under Ulugh Khan and Zafar Khan to attack Multan and capture Arkali Khan and Ibrahim, the two sons of Jalaluddin. The princes were defeated and imprisoned at Hansi. They were blinded and later murdered. In order to win over the nobles, he distributed the booty among them which he had received from his Devgiri campaign. Alauddin's victories. Alauddin had a faith that consolidation, expansion and defense could all go together. He wanted to become a world conqueror and called himself the second Alexander, Sikandar Sani. He adopted the policy of expansion. Alauddin first planned to establish his rule over the whole of India. His victories may be analyzed under two headings. First, conquests of northern India and second, conquests of Deccan. The conquests of northern India. During the period of 1297 to 1305 AD, Alauddin conquered the following states in northern India. Conquest of Gujarat, 1299 AD. Alauddin's general, Nusrat Khan, invaded Gujarat and looted the prosperous port of Kambai. There he purchased a Hindu slave named Malik Kafur for 1,000 dinars. Malik Kafur embraced Islam and later extended the Khalji Empire to the whole of South India. Conquest of Ranthambore, 1301 AD. In 1301, Alauddin's generals Ulugh Khan and Nusrat Khan laid a siege to the fort. Nusrat Khan, along with many Muslim soldiers, was killed in the battle. Ultimately, Alauddin himself took over the command of the army and attacked Ranthambore. The Rajput chief put up a strong resistance but was finally defeated and put to death. Conquest of Chittor, 1303 AD. Alauddin Khalji started for Mewar in 1303. Rana Ratan Singh and his soldiers fought to the last man. In 1305 AD, Alauddin conquered Malwa, the cities of Ujjain, Mandu and Chanderi. Thus, by 1305 AD, Alauddin had become the master of the whole of northern India. The conquests of Deccan, 1307 to 1317 AD. Conquest of Devgiri, 1307 AD. In 1307, Alauddin Khalji sent an army under Malik Kafur against King Ramchandra of Devgiri. The king was defeated but Alauddin allowed him to rule as a vassal. Devgiri now became the base for Alauddin's further campaigns in the south. Conquest of Warangal, 1309 AD. Its ruler, Pratapruddra Deva, offered tough resistance but was defeated. He agreed to pay an annual tribute to the Khalji ruler. Malik Kafur returned to Delhi with an immense booty. Conquest of Dwarsmudra, 1310 to 11 AD. Raja Veera Ballala III submitted without resistance. Malik Kafur looted and plundered some of the famous temples and returned to Delhi with a large quantity of gold, silver, jewels, etc. Conquest of Malabar. Malik Kafur marched to the Malabar coast, which was ruled by the Pandyas. After looting much wealth, he returned to Madurai. Conquest of Madurai, 1311 AD, the Pandya king, Veera Pandya, was defeated. Malik Kafur, with a large booty of horses and elephants, went to Rameshwaram. He built many mosques there and returned to Delhi. Second campaign to Devgiri, 1312 AD, Raja Shankara Deva, the son of Ramchandra, had stopped paying the promised tax to Alauddin Khalji. Malik Kafur again invaded Devgiri and killed Shankara Deva. This was the last Deccan campaign of Malik Kafur. He had brought the whole of South India under the rule of Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin and the Mongols. Alauddin took many steps to stop the invasions of the Mongols. He strengthened his army and made it more efficient. He got the forts repaired which lay on the route of the Mongols. He also got new castles built at important places. He placed his armies in the frontier provinces of Multan, Samana and Dipalpur to check the advancement of the Mongols. The Mongols were so well checked by Alauddin's counter steps that they did not dare invade India as long as he was alive. Alauddin Khalji's administration. Administrative reforms. Alauddin was a strong administrator. In order to control internal revolts and to keep the nobles under his strict control, he introduced several measures. He prohibited the nobles from doing intermarriages so as to prevent them from making alliances against him. He prohibited them from holding social gatherings or drinking at parties. He knew that such parties gave the nobles opportunities to hatch conspiracies. He set up an efficient detective system. Spies called Khufiya Navis listened to bazaar gossip and reported it to the king. This enabled Alauddin to watch the activities of the nobles. He extracted surplus money from the nobles by imposing heavy taxes on them. Alauddin kept a strong and well-equipped army to check external invasions and internal revolts. Economic reforms. Alauddin was the first Sultan of Delhi who took keen interest in the fiscal and economic reforms. He needed money to maintain a large army to fight against the Mongols and for the suppression of internal revolts. So he introduced the following economic and financial reforms to increase his income. Regulation of prices. He issued regulations to control the prices of all items of daily use such as wheat, barley, rice, cloth, sugar, ghee, etc. He introduced standard weights and measures all over the country. The traders who used false weights and measures to cheat people were severely punished. Control over supplies. All the local producers within 100 miles of Delhi were asked to keep only 10 mounds of grain with them and sell the surplus to the government. Large granaries were built to store grains. The food grains were supplied to the people at very low rates in times of hardship. Nobody dared to sell the goods at the rate higher than that fixed by the administration. Control over markets. Alauddin deputed high officials called Shehnai Mandi, superintendents of the market, to control the market's prices and enforce market regulations. Rationing system in times of scarcity. Alauddin introduced the system of rationing whenever droughts or famines occurred in any area of his realm. Revenue reforms. Alauddin made very effective reforms in the land revenue system. The land under cultivation was measured and land revenue was fixed on the basis of fertility of the land. Land tax was collected in both cash as well as kind. He also took steps to end corruption in the collection of land tax. Besides land revenue, grazing tax, chari, was introduced where people reared cattle to support their income. End of the Khalji dynasty. Alauddin died in 1316 AD. None of his heirs was powerful enough to control such a vast empire. Finally, in 1320 AD, a group of nobles led by Ghazi Malik, the governor of Punjab, invaded Delhi and captured the throne. He held the title of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and founded Tughlaq dynasty. The Tughlaq dynasty. The founder of the Tughlaq dynasty was Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, who sat on the throne of Delhi in 1320 AD. He built a new city of Tughlaqabad near Delhi. He strengthened the defense of the northwestern frontier against the Mongol invaders. Ghiyasuddin suppressed the rebels of Hindu chiefs of Deccan and Maharashtra. He invaded Bengal and occupied a large part of it. He met with his death either by conspiracy or by an accident. In 1325 AD, Juna Khan sat on the throne with the title of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. The famous rulers of this dynasty were Ghiyasuddin, Muhammad bin Firuz Shah Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was one of the most efficient rulers of his time. But he was hasty and impatient. Therefore, many of his experiments failed. He has been named an ill-starred idealist by historians. The most controversial step he undertook was the transfer of the capital from Delhi to Devgiri. It appears that the Sultan wanted to make Devgiri a second capital because he felt he would be able to keep an eye over South India better from there. Devgiri, or Daulatabad, was more than 1,500 kilometers away from Delhi. Only half of the people who started the journey could reach Daulatabad safely. After some years, he decided to leave Daulatabad mainly because he noticed that just as he could not check the south from Delhi, so also he could not control the North India from Daulatabad. Another bold step which turned out to be a great failure was the introduction of token currency. He decided to introduce a bronze coin due to scarcity of silver, which was to have the same value as the silver tanka. Thus, people amassed gold and silver coins and used only bronze or copper coins for trade. Hence, traders and common men did not accept it. People began forging the new coins, which thus became greatly devalued in the market. Finally, the Sultan had to withdraw the token currency. Barni mentions that heaps of new coins remained lying outside the Tughlaqabad fort. Likewise, his attacks on Khorasan and Karachil were huge failures. Firuz Shah Tughlaq took keen interest in the economic progress of the country. He repaired and dug a number of canals and built several new towns. Timur's invasion of India, 1398 AD. Timur, Tamerlane, attacked India in 1398 when the Delhi Sultanate was on the verge of collapse. He crossed the plains of Punjab without any protest. The people ran for their lives, leaving their homes to be looted by the invaders. When the invaders reached the gates of Delhi, the Delhi Sultan Mahmud and his minister Malik Iqbal Khan offered a weak resistance. In the battle fought in 1398, Timur got a victory. After staying in Delhi for 15 days and amassing immense wealth, he moved back via Meerut, Haridwar, Kangra and Jammu, sacking and plundering towns. The Sayyid dynasty. Before leaving India, Timur had appointed Khizr Khan as the governor of Punjab. In 1414, Khizr Khan marched to Delhi and sat on the throne of the Delhi Sultanate. He founded the new dynasty known as the Sayyid Sultans of Delhi. There were 4 rulers in all: Khizr Khan, 1414 to 1421 AD, Mubarak Shah, 1421 to 1434 AD, Muhammad Shah, 1434 to 1443 AD, and Alam Shah, 1443 to 1450 AD. During the period of the Sayyids, Punjab was a disturbed area and there were frequent revolts at various places. The Lodi dynasty. Behlol Lodi, 1451 to 1488 AD. The last ruler of the Sayyid dynasty, Alam Shah, was overthrown by Behlol Lodi, the governor of Lahore and Sirhind. He occupied Delhi and founded the new dynasty named as Lodi dynasty. Sikandar Lodi, 1488 to 1517 AD. Sikandar Lodi was the most capable ruler of the Lodi dynasty. He tried to consolidate his power by bringing the provincial governors and chieftains under his control. He suppressed the prevailing disorder and, like Balban, attempted to restore the dignity of the court. The roads became safe for journey and trade again flourished. Abdullah, the author of Tarikh-i-Dauri, speaks highly of him. But in 1517, Sikandar fell ill and died. Ibrahim Lodi, 1517 to 1526 AD. Sikandar Lodi was succeeded by Ibrahim Lodi. An arrogant ruler, he irritated the Afghan nobles by his harsh treatment and made them enemy. Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, turned against him and declared himself practically independent. He invited Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur, the king of Afghanistan, to invade India and overthrow Ibrahim Lodi. Babur attacked 5 times on India during 1519 to 26 AD. During the fifth and final invasion, Babur defeated Daulat Khan Lodi. As Daulat Khan realized that Babur wished to conquer India for himself, so he turned against him. This compelled Babur to retire to Kabul. In November 1525, he moved from Kabul again with a big army and captured Punjab. Babur now moved towards Delhi and reached Panipat. Ibrahim Lodi also marched to take on the Mughal invader on the battlefield of Panipat in 1526 AD. Although Babur's army was much smaller in number, it had fine artillery. Ibrahim Lodi died on the battlefield along with 15 to 16,000 soldiers. Babur won a decisive victory. The Battle of Panipat decided not only the fate of Punjab but also that of India. The Sultanate rule came to an end and Babur laid the foundations of the Mughal Empire in India. Life and culture under the Delhi Sultanate. The rule of the Sultanate of Delhi, extending over a period of 5 centuries, had a great impact on the social, economic, religious and cultural life of the people of India. This period of Indian history had many features which were quite different from those of ancient India. Social life. Indian society during the medieval period was mainly distributed into 4 major classes or groups: the aristocracy, the priests, the town people, and the village people or peasants. The upper class or aristocracy comprised the ruling class. It included the Sultan, the nobles, the landlords, and Hindu kings or princes. The second class included the priests or the ulemas, the Maulvis, the Qazis, the Brahmins or the Pandits. They advised the rulers on the matters of administration in accordance with the sacred laws. This priestly class received land grants from the rulers for their living. Common people also offered them gifts and donations. The people in towns formed the third section of society. They included shopkeepers, merchants, traders, etc. Most of the farmers and peasants formed the fourth and lowest section of society. They mostly paid land revenue and other taxes, but led a miserable life. Economic life. Just like the ancient period, agriculture was the main occupation of the masses in medieval India. Firuz Shah Tughlaq took some steps to promote agriculture. He built 5 canals and dug a large number of wells. His irrigation works proved a boon for the farmers. The state also gave loans to the farmers in times of drought and famine. India had trade relations with Central and Western Asia. It was mostly in the hands of Multani Hindu traders. India also had trade relations with the Srivijaya Empire, China, East Africa and Arabia. The Srivijaya Empire flourished between the 7th and 13th centuries AD. This maritime and commercial kingdom in the Malay archipelago A group of islands originated on the island of Sumatra and soon came to control the Strait of Malacca. It controlled international sea trade and had relations with other islands and with China and India. It was also a center for Mahayana Buddhism and a stopping place for Chinese pilgrims visiting to India. In northern India, Delhi was a great center of trade. It was the market for the sale and purchase of goods like rice, sugar, wheat, fine silk, cotton textiles, metal wares, handicrafts, ivory, etc. The necessities of life seemed to be cheaper during the reign of Alauddin Khilji due to his economic reforms and market regulation. Firuz Shah Tughlaq abolished many improper taxes. This resulted in the growth of trade. Sikandar Lodi also introduced economic reforms that encouraged trade and industry. Despite all this, the people had to bear the cost of the huge army kept by the sultans. Besides this, foreign invasions and internal revolts also hampered the growth of trade and agriculture at times. Art and architecture. Though the sultans of Delhi were not as magnificent builders as Mughal rulers, they took a fair amount of interest in architecture. They founded new cities, built palaces, rest houses, bridges, mosques and tombs. Alauddin Khilji built the city of Siri, and Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq built the city of Tughlaqabad. Firuz Shah Tughlaq built the cities of Hisar, Firoza and Jaunpur. The famous Adina Masjid at Padua built by Sikandar Shah was one of the largest mosques in the Muslim world. The Jama Masjid at Ahmedabad and Mahmud Begada's mosque at Champaign are beautiful and lofty structures. The Quwwatul Islam Mosque built by Qutubuddin Aibak is a fine example of the Indo-Muslim style of architecture. The Adhai Din Ka Jhonpada Mosque at Ajmer was built by Qutubuddin Aibak, but was expanded by Iltutmish. Qutubuddin Aibak also started the construction of the Qutub Minar in Delhi, but it was finally finished by Iltutmish. This magnificent minar was originally 225 feet high and had 4 stories. Firuz Shah Tughlaq was the most magnificent builder of all the Tughlaq rulers. The greatest monuments of his reign are Firuz Shah Kotla, Kali Masjid, Lal Gumbaj and his own mausoleum. The most important monument of the Lodi dynasty is the Maut Ki Masjid built by Sikandar Lodi. Language and literature. The Delhi Sultans encouraged the study of Persian, the language spoken mostly by the rulers, nobility and the ulema. Sanskrit was the classical language of the Hindus but was spoken only by highly learned Hindus. The Bhakti movement led to the growth of various regional languages such as Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Kannada, Tamil and Telugu. Many Sanskrit books were translated into other Indian languages. Persian, being the court language, was important for both the Muslims and the Hindus. Both the communities contributed to the growth of Persian language. Amir Khusro, nicknamed the Parrot of India, belonged to this period. He was a famous author and poet who wrote in Persian, Hindi and Urdu. Besides, famous historians like Minhajul Siraj and Ziauddin Barni and traveller Ibn Battuta used Persian to write their accounts about rulers, political events, and the lives of the common people. Urdu, a new hybrid language, also originated during this era. It was a simple language, understandable by both the Turks and the Indians. The origin of Punjabi literature is also traced from this period. Baba Sheikh Farid sang both in Punjabi and Persian. He was the first Sufi poet who used standard literary Punjabi. The Vijayanagar rulers patronized Sanskrit. The famous Sanskrit scholars of this period were Ramanuj, Sarthi Mishra and Jaydev. The Delhi Sultanate rulers got many Sanskrit works translated into Persian and Arabic. Delhi Sultanate and their administration. The rulers of the Delhi Sultanate were autocrats and enjoyed enormous powers. The Sultan's word was law. He could appoint any person to any post and dismiss him according to his will. He governed with the help of some advisors and ministers. The Sultan was expected to follow the rules based on the Quran and Islamic traditions. The Qazi and the Ulema had a great impact on the administration. But sultans like Balban, Alauddin Khalji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq did not give much importance to them. The power of the Delhi sultans depended on their army. They maintained their power by the sword. War booty was one of the main sources of income for these sultans. The most important among sultans' ministers were the wazir or the revenue minister and the Mir Bakshi or the paymaster of the army. The minister in charge of the military organization was called Diwan-i-Aris. The Diwan-i-Risalat was the minister of religious affairs. The empire was divided into provinces, subas. The subas were divided into shiks and shiks into parganas. These parganas consisted of some villages. The governor of a province was called the wali, mukti or subedar. The main duty of the governor was to maintain law and order in the province. The village was the primary unit of local administration. A group of villages was called a pargana. The chief officer of the pargana was called the amil, who was responsible for the collection of land revenue. The village headman was called muqaddam or chaudhry. The kotwal was the head of the police department of the town. Criminals were given severe punishments during the rule of the Delhi sultans. Ikta system. The term ikta means the land or land revenue assigned to an individual on behalf of the ruler. In the beginning, the Turkish administration was essentially military. The sultans divided the empire into a number of tracts called iktas, which were assigned to the military leaders. The holder of an ikta was called iktadar, but he did not own the land. He maintained law and order in the ikta and collected the land. Revenue due to the state. Out of the land revenue thus collected, the iktadar met the cost of administration. He was allowed a part of the income for his own use. He sent the balance, if any, to the state treasury. There were three important taxes. First, on cultivation called kharaj, half of the produce, second, on cattle, and third, on houses. The nobility and the courts. The sultans and nobles enjoyed a high standard of living. Most of them came from the Turkish and Afghan families that settled in India. The nobles were very powerful during the Sultanate period. Sometimes, they even influenced state policies. The Sultan occupied the most important place. He was the center of all political, judicial, and military power. Like most Hindu rulers, every sultan in the Sultanate period built his own palace. Sultan Balban had a dazzling court and protocols which were designed to impress visitors. The Khalji sultans followed the same tradition. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, in fact, took this convention to new heights. Ibn Battuta described how a person who wanted to visit the Sultan had to pass through three lofty, heavily guarded gates. He then entered the Court of Thousand Pillars, which was a vast hall and decorated with costly things. This was the place where the Sultan held his public court. The Sultan's birthday and the Nowruz, the Persian New Year, were both celebrated with great pomp and show. The court was a hotbed of political conspiracies, backstabbing diplomacy. The nobles tried to copy the elegant living of the sultans. They lived in magnificent palaces, wore costly clothes, and were surrounded by a large number of servants, slaves, and retainers. The sultans continued to grant land or villages to an officer in lieu of paying him a salary. The grant was not hereditary and could be transferred. But when the central authority became weak, the grant usually came to be regarded as hereditary. Although Alauddin Khilji repressed the ostentatious living of the nobles, yet during Tughlaq's period, a number of nobles were able to amass wealth. The sultans and the nobles built gardens, orchards, markets, etc. Thus, during the Sultanate period, a new class of landed gentry came up. The breakup of the Delhi Sultanate towards the beginning of the 15th century brought this trend to a halt. Keywords: Sajda, prostration before the Sultan. Peboz, Persian custom of kissing the feet of the Sultan to acknowledge his supremacy. Lak Baksh, giver of lakhs. Mongols, warlike race originating from Mongolia. The 40, a clique of 40 Turkish nobles. Vassal, a subordinate chief. Artillery, large caliber guns used in warfare on land. Protocol, the accepted code of procedure or behavior in a particular situation. Let's revise. The Sultanate period, 1206 to 1526 AD, saw the rise and fall of 5 dynasties: the Slaves, Khalji, Tughlaqs, Saids, and Lodis. The Slave dynasty ruled from 1206 to 1290 AD. Kutubuddin Aibak, Iltutmish, Razia, and Balban were important rulers of this dynasty. The Khaljis ruled from 1290 to 1320 AD. Alauddin Khilji was the most ambitious and powerful sultan of the dynasty. The Tughlaqs, 1320 to 1414 AD, succeeded the Khaljis. Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Shah Tughlaq were famous rulers of this dynasty. Timur invaded India in 1398 AD. The Sayyid dynasty ruled for a short period of time. They were overthrown by the Lodis. The Lodis ruled from 1451 to 1526 AD. Sikandar Lodi and Ibrahim Lodi were famous Lodi rulers. The Lodis were overthrown by Babur, who started the Mughal dynasty. History is the record of past.
Like, share, and subscribe.